Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I usually welcome people one by one, but I was working through some audio issues, so it's a little bit late and everyone's storming in at once. So we'll go through introductions here in a little bit, and thanks to everyone for being here. Given that it's 4:04, we usually wait till about this time to get started. I think we can probably get started. Looks like folks are in there. All LSR's audio is still connecting, so we'll wait for that, and then we'll jump on in.
Doug, I'm joining by I'm listening by phone.
Oh, okay. So you can hear us. You're here. So here we go. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again today to talk about VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. A reminder that we're recording today's meeting. I'm Doug Moody. I'm standing in today as facilitator while we continue to bring on board the right long-term facilitator for the CWGs. Next slide, please. So today, we're going to provide a summary of what we recently heard from the community regarding community priorities for the stations, both from last month's CWG and from the community social the VTA hosted for the BSV project on August 27th. Then Tony Bauer is with us. He's with the CP2, that's the tunnel and track work team. He's going to share with you some of the proposed innovations coming out of talks with the contracting team hired to build the tunnel. And then following that, we'll have some information to share about the station refinements process. Peter Sokolov is going to lead that conversation. The station refinements process is underway for the downtown and Diridon stations. That's following direction from the VTA board. And then we'll have some space for the CWG member report outs, and a reminder that the CWG member report outs part of the meeting is your opportunity to share with the group how you've been sharing information and updates about the BSV2 project with your community and some of the things you've heard from your communities regarding the project. Next slide, please. And then also note that we also have some information about upcoming meetings to share with you as well. But before we jump into the presentation, we'd like to give the opportunity for CWG members to that are here today to introduce themselves. Just to keep in the interest of time, just state your name and the organization you're with or the community you represent, and we'll jump on down the list for folks that I see here. Adina, is Adina on the line today? I don't see Adina. Alan, is Alan here today? Don't see Alan. Bert, I think I saw Bert. Bert, are you with us today?
Bert's here today. Yes, it's Bert Weaver, and I represent Delmas Park Neighborhood Association.
Thank you very much, Bert, and welcome. I don't believe I see Carol. Charlie. Don't see Charlie.
Charlie's not here, but this is Jennifer Maluta from San Jose State, Senior Director for Community and Government Relations.
Great, thank you, Jennifer, and welcome. Chris, I do see Chris. Chris, you want to say hello to the group?
Chris Morrissey with the San Jose Arena Authority.
Thank you very much, Chris. I don't see, do I see Dana? I don't see Dana. And then also, if you're with an organization and it's not the name listed, please do just like Jennifer did and jump in. Derek with the Chamber of Commerce. I don't see Derek. Edgar with California Walks. Don't see Edgar. Elizabeth, I see Elizabeth. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, Elizabeth Chin-Hill with San Jose Downtown Residents Association.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And then I do see Fred. Fred, the chair of the Downtown Diridon CWG. Fred, would you like to say hi?
Yeah, Fred Buzo with Spur in San Jose.
Thank you, Fred. I don't see Jeffrey. Yeah, Jim. I don't see Jim. Is there anyone else here representing the Sharks or the SAP Center?
Yeah, hi here. Cameron Mitsumori with Shark Sports and Entertainment.
Great, thank you, Cameron, and welcome. Larry? Don't see Larry. Or Scott, is there anyone else here with the Downtown Association?
Hi, Doug. I'm Nate.
There you are, Nate. Hi, Nate.
Yep. Scott is retiring, so for the time being, I will be representing SJDA. Hello, everyone. Thanks for doing this.
So we should probably update your name on this slide for the time being until we get an updated name. So thank you to the CWG members and members of the public for being here today. Next slide, please. So before we get into the summary of recent engagement that Adriana is going to provide, want to provide a reminder of some of the upcoming meetings. So we're going to have CWGs again in November, and the BSD project is going to be presented and discussed with the VTA Board of Directors in the coming months. So there's a workshop on September 16th. There's a Board of Directors meeting on October 6th, and then another Board of Directors meeting on November 3rd. And Kristen will email out the alerts for the other meetings. So that's the intro and the overview. Adriano, you're up to give the overview, the summary of our recent engagement.
All right. Thank you, Doug. Hi, everyone. I'm Adriano Rothschild with VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 External Affairs team and the stakeholder coordinator for the downtown station. So just wanted to recap what we heard from the community in the past month. As we will talk more about today, but as a reminder, we are undergoing a station refinement evaluation process where we're looking to explore opportunities for refinements to our current designs. And these are being looked at through a lens of 3 major buckets. So passenger experience and urban design, and then ultimately making sure that the concepts and the refinements that we are looking at are implementable within our timeline. Largely in the passenger experience and urban design, we're looking at legibility, directness, travel time, access and mobility, visibility and safety, aesthetic expression, natural light. We also wanted to talk about TOD integration and urban integration, and ultimate intermodal connectivity and the ability to meet that pedestrian demand, so capacity. So we did have quite a bit of valuable discussion on this at our workshop last month. If we could move to the next slide here. Just to recap, we had a series of polling questions and then did break out into various groups. So each group did have slightly different priorities on the evaluation and what elements are most important in design. I think partly based on what station area you are in and what area, what that station's priorities ought to be. They are different for the downtown and the Diridon station. Generally what we did here is that there was a lot of desire for TOD integration. What you'll notice is that if listed on the previous slide, but not here, is the urban integration criterion. And so that was added based on the conversation and how that TOD integration really was described. TOD integration kind of fell into 2 categories, both the integration of high density development above our stations and around our stations, but also a lot of emphasis was put on the provision of ground floor activation, retail space, things that really help bring life to the station area. And so we felt that it made sense to separate out and add an urban integration category in here. That's not reflected in these priority pyramids. But generally, TOD was a top priority. And the pyramid on the left, which was I think most representative of our Diridon group, did have an emphasis more on intermodal connectivity and travel time. So we, based on these conversations, and next slide please, based on these conversations, we did bring all of this similar exercise to our community social. As Doug mentioned, our community social was held on August 27th. We had over 100 people show up and provide their input on a hot Saturday. Really was a great experience seeing and being able to talk to everyone that did come by and provide input. And we had, you'll see a series of these tents. Each of the tents had a different topic. So it was really a great experience and way for us to be able to educate the public and provide an opportunity for feedback to be received on various different elements. So today we're really focusing on the downtown and Diridon feedback. And so on the next slide, you'll see we had aboard the similar priority question that we brought to the workshop here in August. On the left is the Diridon board, and on the right was the downtown board. And so again, I wanted to call out that urban integration was a new category that was added based on the conversations that we had with this group. And you can see that that was in fact listed as a top priority for the downtown station, whereas the intermodal connectivity was a top priority for the Diridon. TOD integration still as a whole was a top priority, listed second on both of those. So moving on to the next slide, we've compiled all of this great feedback and input that we've received. This graph shows the prioritization of the criteria and different elements of passenger experience and station design for the Diridon station specific. Well, with an asterisk. The dark blue shows the feedback we received from our CWG as a whole. So that feedback is based on both downtown and Diridon. And I did want to note again that when we asked that question in mid-August, we had TOD integration, but did not have urban integration. So that was scoring as a 0 here, in part because it wasn't an option. In light blue, you see the input we received from our community social event. And so we largely heard that intermodal connectivity was a top priority at the Diridon station, with access and mobility and TOD being just behind. So moving on to the next slide, we have the downtown station community feedback. So again, in dark blue is the CWG feedback. It was not specific to just the downtown station. And again, you'll see that TOD integration was the highest priority. We think that's fairly consistent with what we've heard from the community. The only difference being that the community had the additional option of voting for urban integration, and we made clear that urban integration focused more on ground floor activation, retail space, which is still TOD integration, but not so much of a focus on high density on site, but more of activating the street. And so here we see a lot of similarities overall, though, with TOD urban integration being top priorities, closely followed by access, mobility, and intermodal connectivity, as well as visibility and safety. So all of this input has been really helpful for us as we continue to move through the process of developing and defining our concepts, which Peter will speak to more later on today. But it's really feeding into the types of refinements and where we focus our energy as we advance or develop potential refinements. And ultimately, those will be evaluated for passenger experience and urban design, and then on to making sure that they can be constructed and implemented within the timelines that are feasible for the project. So that's what I have today. I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have.
I think comments are welcome as well. We can also save them to the report out if there's not anything immediately. Fred, you came off mute. Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, like how many, it may have been on the slide, but how many responses in the community social did you get?
Can we switch back to that? I think there were about one more back. So I think we had about 60 or so.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So
I see right there,
with that, these numbers are kind of stacked a little bit. Now, when we did have this exercise, we provided 3 dots to the
Mhm.
participants, and we asked them to put the dots for their highest priorities.
Mhm.
In some cases, participants put 3 dots in the same priority. In
Wow.
some cases, they spread them out. So it is a little bit of a mix of all of that, but I would say probably had, I think in all, we probably had about 20 or so people go through this exercise
Okay. Thanks.
for
And if
each of
there-
the stations specific, like not, yeah, they were done separately and independently.
And if there's other questions or comments, encourage you just to raise your hand first, then I can call on you. Or if you don't know how to use the raise hand feature is not working great for you, feel free to chime in. Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you, Adriano. Tony, you are up to talk about the proposed CP2, which is tunnel and track work innovations.
All right, I'm up. Yeah, so hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Tony Bauer. I am the Deputy Project Manager for Contract Package 2, which is the tunnel and track work contract. So this is the largest of the 4 contract packages, and we just awarded the contract a couple of months ago, and we kicked off a study of some early innovations that I'm going to be talking to you guys about today that we're really, really excited about. So that's my background, and we'll go ahead and jump to the next slide, and we'll talk through what we've been working on. Oh, I thought the slide was at the end, but that's okay. So yeah, as we talked about before, there are 3 parallel efforts that were undertaken as part of the May 5th VTA Board of Directors meeting that they directed our staff to look at. The first one is awarding a limited notice to proceed to contract package 2, which is the one that I'm focused on, to evaluate some proposed innovations which came in as part of the contractor's proposal. The board also directed us to undertake this station design refinement effort, which we'll discuss, I believe, after my section today. And also in parallel, there is a peer exchange going on tunneling methodology that's happening in parallel to this, and the results of that are going to be presented to the board in an upcoming workshop. And then, yeah, you can see the different VTA Board of Directors engagement milestones that we've had over the last this month and into October as well. Go to the next slide, please. So as some of you may or may not know, we have a progressive design build model for contract package 2. And so this is a pretty unique delivery model that we're using for contract package 2. And what it really does is it focuses on defining the goals of the project and then the technical requirements of the project, but leaves a lot of the design choices in terms of defining exactly the configuration of the design up to the contractor. And we want to do that very intentionally because we want them to bring their best ideas to VTA and work with them to evaluate their ideas with stakeholders like yourselves, with VTA, and with our operator BART, all jointly. And then that allows us to not just define exactly what the project should look like up front without having any of that valuable contractor input, but really walk like hand in hand with them to define the project. So that was always intended with the progressive design build delivery model. And as expected, when we received the proposals for CP2 contract, the 2 bidders that we had came up with a number of really great ideas on how the project should be structured and configured that we wanted to further evaluate. So that was in the proposal that came in, and we briefed the VTA Board of Directors on conceptually what some of these innovations are, and that's why they had directed us at the May 5th board meeting to spend the next 90 days or so evaluating these innovations and vetting which ones could be carried on into what we call the programming services phase, but essentially the preliminary engineering design phase that we're kicking off in September. So as part of these innovations, what we wanted to evaluate them against was these 4 main criteria. Was number 1, what impacts do they have, either positive or negative, to operations, maintenance, and safety? And so these are the 3 areas that our partners at BART are most focused on. The second is to evaluate how they would impact the passenger's experience when we're actually using the final product after we've delivered the whole program. And so these are a lot of the customer facing elements and actually how the system operates and interacts with the passengers. A third option is constructability. Obviously, our contractor partners are very focused on this. What impacts it have to constructability, and what changes can we make to make the project easier to construct in the field, either safer or less risky to build. And then the fourth one, of course, is where can we find areas to improve cost and schedule with certain design changes that we have while still meeting the goals of the overall project. So next slide, please. So we had 38 innovations, which essentially came out of the proposal process. And so we discussed these initially with our contractor, Kiewit Shea Trailer. And with them, we consolidated these 38. We grouped some of them together, removed some of them, but we really boiled it down to these 16 key innovations. And these 16 innovations we carried into a 90-day sprint where we further developed the concept. So that they had great ideas that came out of the contractor, but they had to be shaped somewhat with a staff that we already have working on the project, because they're very familiar with the project and constraints. And further develop those ideas and then evaluate what impacts they have to those 4 main evaluation criteria in that 90 days. And coming out of that 90-day exercise, we were directed to make a recommendation of what innovations we should be carrying forward into the design phase. And so we are just wrapping that phase up right now, and we presented the initial findings of that phase to the VTA Board of Directors and the VTA and BART board workshops that we've had over the last couple of weeks. And we'll sort of summarize a couple of those key innovations today. Next slide, please. So as I said, there were 16 innovations that we carried into this 90-day exercise. This is a map showing the alignment of the phase 2 project. And really the map is meant to represent that the innovations spanned really from end to end across the whole project. So all the way from the far west side of the job to the east side of the job. And some of them were more what we would consider construction means and methods types of innovations that wouldn't really have an impact on the final configuration of the project, all the way up to very large changes to the fundamental configuration of what this project's going to be about. And so we wanted to focus on the 3 that are highlighted here, which we think would have the biggest impact on the overall configuration. So we'll talk through each of these 4 in the next couple, or each of these 3 in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So the first one is an innovation that's looking at reconfiguring the way that the track is laid out within the underground portion of the alignment. So as you can see at the rendering on the left-hand side, this is the reference design configuration for the downtown and Diridon station. So I'm sure everybody on this call is very familiar with that. But we had originally we had the concept of stacked platforms. So there'd be one trainway on top of the other, and both of the platforms for the stations at downtown and Diridon would be built within the bored tunnel in a stacked arrangement. Now, the proposed innovation would change that a bit. And then if we can click to the next animation. So this is the proposed concept for all 3 of the underground stations for the project, where the contractor is proposing to actually slightly increase the size of the tunnel by about 5 feet. And that will allow us actually to locate the trains in a side-by-side arrangement the whole way. From the east portal all the way to the west portal. And at the 3 underground stations, it would allow us to place a 22-foot wide center platform in between those tracks. Now, what that does is it greatly simplifies the tunnel configuration, or the cross section of the tunnel, because if you can think about on the left-hand side, when in the original design, we had the trains coming into the tunnel in a side-by-side arrangement where they're both at the same level. And then because we had the stations where the trainways are on top of each other, it requires a complicated maneuver or dance of the trains going from that side-by-side to a stacked arrangement on either side of downtown San Jose Station and Diridon Station. Now, the interior concrete structures, in order to do that dance of the trains, was very costly and time consuming in the contractor's eyes, and was greatly would lead to much longer construction durations, increased cost, and potentially increased construction risks associated with that. So what their proposal is, even though we have a slightly larger tunnel diameter, the cost increase associated with that is outweighed by the time savings and the simplification that they can make by arranging the structures inside the tunnel in a very systematic and standard way from end to end. So we can go to the next slide, please. This slide, I think, talks a little bit about what I was just discussing, but some of the main benefits that we see from this is operational flexibility. So we have the trains essentially at in the same location throughout the underground alignment, which allows us to locate switches and special track work for the trains to go from one side of the tracks to the other in case of maintenance or downtime or an emergency. And so our operators at BART greatly prefer this configuration for that flexibility. We also see a better passenger experience at the stations with this. So as you can see with this rendering on the right-hand side, the passengers would enter into the tunnel at this mezzanine, which is on the upper level, where you can see with that where the glass and the stairs are coming up. And that gives us the option of a greater amount of flexibility in where we locate those station entrances, because passengers are able to enter that mezzanine and travel along the platform and down the stairs or the elevators to that platform level. So in terms of wayfinding, it's greatly simplified. You don't have to pre-select which platform you're going to. You would come down the exact same way and go to the center platform. It limits the potential for going to the wrong platform and having to go and switch platforms. It's a simplified path of travel, and it's actually, even though we are not making the tunnel any shallower, the distance that a passenger has to travel from the street level to the platform is slightly reduced just because of the way that the tunnel is configured. And we also think that it's a much more intuitive emergency egress path. So in the event of an emergency, it's much more standard of a system that our passengers are going to be familiar with using elsewhere in the Bay Area. As we talked a little bit about, the third main bullet here is improved construction schedule and sequencing. We think that there's big benefits there in terms of the way that we're going to build this project. And then also the tunnels that connect the station entrance boxes to the tunnel, we call those adits. And we've been able to greatly simplify those adit structures in how they're connected, and that's reduced construction risk and increased productivity from the simplification and the standardization of the way that we're building those structures. Next slide, please. So this is a rendering of what downtown San Jose Station could look like. So on the left-hand side, you have our main entrance building, which is on the VTA block where the current Chase Bank is. And on the right-hand side, we have our second entrance. And you can see how we don't have the vertical circulation elements, so the escalators coming from the street level down, but you can get a sense of these are the excavations that will be created for those station entrances and down, and then how those station entrance boxes would connect to these mezzanines, which are floating above the platform level. So our passengers would enter into this mezzanine and go along the mezzanine and down some stairs to the platform level. We call this concept also the split mezzanine. So you see we don't have a continuous mezzanine that goes the entire length of the platform. We have two distinct mezzanines which are near the station entrance boxes. But what that allows us to do is create this larger space in between the two mezzanines. So when you're standing on the platform, you'll have a greater headroom, and it'll be a much more roomy space, which we like from a passenger experience standpoint. All right, next slide, please. And then I won't go through all of these, but again, talking about those main criteria which we use to evaluate these, we see big benefits in all of those criteria: operability, maintainability, safety, better passenger experience, improved cost and schedule. And so I think we'll distribute these slides probably afterwards, and you can go through and read all of these. But for time, I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, so the second one is, and I think I already alluded to it, so I might have jumped the gun a little bit, but the innovation is related to a change in the configuration at 28th Street Little Portugal Station. So as you can see on the left-hand side, this was the original rendering of what that station could look like. But this is it was always envisioned as more of a traditional cut and cover type station. So this would be a large, about 800-foot long box, which was excavated from the surface. The tunnel boring machine would be driven into that box and then dragged through the box and then launched on the other end. And then the tracks would be in the center of the station with 2 platforms on the outside of the tracks. So that was the original intention for 28th Street and Little Portugal Station. Now, what the contractors come up with is, well, now with the previous innovation, I have standardized the way that the tunnel looks from end to end. So why don't we standardize the station arrangement at 28th Street to be very similar to downtown San Jose and Little Portugal Station, which would allow the station platform area to be built within the bored tunnel, and we wouldn't have to excavate that area from the surface. So on the right-hand side, this is kind of a fun little sketch that we put together, but this is just really showing the scale of the excavations that were originally planned for the 28th Street Little Portugal Station. You can see that the excavation was about 3 football fields long, and it would be deep enough to fit a 10-story building. Now, with this innovation, what the contractor is able to do is reduce the size of the excavation from that 3 football fields long to really only the area about what is shown in that red rectangle right there. So we have a reduction of the excavated volume of the cut and cover portion by about 2/3. So pretty significant improvements there. If we can go to the next slide, we'll show some of what those station entrance concepts would look like. So we're still evaluating 2 different options. One would be more of a rectangular station box, which was kind of diagrammed in that red rectangle on the previous slide. And a second option would be with a circular shaft that would go down to the tunnel level. And you can sort of see from these renderings that the access from the street level down to the platform would be provided in these boxes, but then the remainder of the station would be built within the bored tunnel. So we would build these mezzanines, we would build the platforms, the 700-foot long platforms, all in the bored tunnel, and they would really only be accessed from a much smaller volume of space that we have to excavate down from the surface. Next slide, please. And yeah, sort of our summary slide again, we see big benefits in this innovation. We're really excited about this innovation, especially with its potential to reduce construction impacts in this area, and really just sort of standardize the look and feel of all the stations throughout the project. So. All right, so the third and final innovation that we want to just discuss today is a change in the ventilation system. So aside from the 3 underground stations that we're going to be building for this project, there are also 2 mid-tunnel ventilation facilities which would have to be constructed with the original design. One of them is at Stockton and Shield Avenue on the west side of the alignment, and then the second one is at 13th and Santa Clara on the eastern side of the alignment. Now, these are pretty significant structures. You can sort of see our little silhouette man there, who's circled in red, just to kind of give a sense of scale. But these are very large, very complicated, very costly structures, which were really only there to provide a facility to locate the emergency ventilation equipment. And then because they were there for the emergency ventilation equipment, a lot of other facilities to operate the system got located there. Now, the innovation that the contractor is proposing is, hey, can we relocate all of that emergency ventilation equipment from these sites to elsewhere on the project, like the station locations or the portals, and allow us to eliminate any need for these ventilation facilities at all. That's the innovation. We'll go to the next slide and we'll talk through that. And again, I would say that this innovation continues to build on that first innovation that we talked about with the side-by-side tracks and really that standardization of a cross-section from end to end. So as you can I'll sort of talk from bottom to top on these labels, but you can see on the bottom right-hand side where it says invert ventilation duct. So this is a void space which is being created underneath of where the trainways would be. And that void space is being proposed to be used for the ventilation system itself. So in an emergency, smoke would be pulled from the trainway into these what we call EVS stacks, and then the smoke would be pulled into the bottom of the tunnel and then would be pulled along the length of the tunnel, but outside of the trainway to the ventilation facilities, which are elsewhere along the alignment. But because we have that standard tunnel cross section and that void space is continuous from end to end, it gives us a lot of flexibility in where we can put the emergency ventilation equipment, and it's more flexibility than we had with the original design. And that really drove the need for these emergency ventilation facilities at 13th and Stockton, was because of the stacked and the stacked track arrangement for downtown and Diridon. So we really like this concept. We think it really optimizes the use of the entire tunnel cross section. It's taking advantage of space that we're already having to build out for the rest of it, and then gives us the flexibility to take those emergency ventilation equipment, which were located at the mid-tunnel facilities, and locate them at the stations or at the portals. So we're still evaluating, and we have to, we have a lot more design to do, but we're very optimistic that we are not going to need to build these mid-tunnel ventilation facilities for this project. Next slide, please. Yes, and our summary slide, again, we see big operability benefits because of the reduced facilities that we need to maintain long-term. Maintainability, same. We think it's greater in safety because it gives you a lot more operational flexibility of how BART would respond in an emergency underground. And I think that might be, oh, I have one more slide. Okay. So we'll this is a schedule of some future board engagement that we'll have for the CP2 contract. So as shown in the second line here, in May of this year, we awarded, or the board authorized us to award stage 1 of the contract. And that kicked off this 90-day innovations evaluation. And then we presented that innovations overview last month to the VTA Board of Directors. Now, in order to maintain our schedule, the design is going to continue on the concepts which we outlined here and the other scope of work for CP2. That design is going to continue for the next about 2 years. But we, in order to meet our overall program schedule, we're going to need to be starting construction activities earlier before that design is fully done. So we'll be starting construction activities on long lead items. A couple of examples of these long lead items are ordering of the tunnel boring machine, which will take about 18 to 24 months to manufacture and then have delivered to our site in San Jose. Also getting work started at the West Portal over at Newhall Yard. This will be the site that we assemble the tunnel boring machine and launch the machine from. And then we'll also be conducting a bunch of enabling works activities like building demolition, utility relocations, and some other early works items. So we're calling each one of these distinct scopes of work early works packages. And so we plan to go back to the VTA Board of Directors to ask for authorization to award these early works packages in 2 tranches. That first tranche will be at the end of this year or early next year. And then we'll have a second ask for those early works packages at the end of 2023. And then as the design advances and gets to a near or probably about an 80% level of completeness, we will be working with our contractor to negotiate the final price of the remaining scope of work that's not included as an early works package. And so we, through the progressive design build process, they are preparing the cost estimates in an open book fashion. So we'll have full visibility into how that cost estimate is developed for the remaining construction activities. And we'll have the cost validation exercise as part of that. But either way, at the beginning, first half of 2024, we anticipate going back to the board of directors with the results of that open book cost estimating exercise, and asked to award the contract for the remainder of the what we call heavy construction, but the remainder of the construction activities there. So we have certainly a busy 18 months ahead of us, and that's what we're working on. And I think with that, I'll take any questions on our slides.
I have one.
Sure.
Tony, first off, thank you for taking the time to provide this update. This is very significant information that you provided. What I was wondering is, can you take a minute, since a lot of this is new information provided to the committee, the working group, could you talk a little bit about the contractor? A little bit about their background?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So I would say we had a very lengthy procurement process in general. So our procurement process was almost 2 years long. It started out with a request for industry feedback, where we had some key issues that we wanted to discuss with the contracting community at large, and get some feedback on how we structure the procurement and the contract documents themselves. So that started about 2 years ago. And we went through that process. We solicited a lot of great feedback, which I would say formed a little bit of the way that the contract documents came together. From there, we had a request for qualifications process, where we shortlisted teams that were capable of bidding on a job of this scope and scale. And so we had 5 submissions as part of the RFQ. So we had 5 international design build teams that submitted pre-qualifications for. We shortlisted that down to 3, and then we issued a RFP to those 3. And then we collected in December of last year, we collected 2 proposals of the 3 shortlisted teams. So the selected shortlisted team that we had is a joint venture between Kiewit Contracting, Shea, and Trailer. So these are, I would say, the 3 premier tunneling contractors in the United States. They have done billions of dollars of work in California, dozens of projects for BART. So they have great local experience, which is very important. Another big aspect of why we liked this team so much is they have a significant amount of alternative delivery experience. So experience with progressive design build or CMGC or other types of delivery models where they're working very collaboratively with the owner through the process. And so they were able to demonstrate really great experience doing that. And then they just, I would say, again, they're some of the largest and most talented tunneling contractors in the US. And so we were very, very happy with, I would say, the quality of both proposals that we got, but especially the contractor that we selected.
Well, thank you for that. Will VTA be providing on their website more information about the contractor? Because it sounds like you've got some high expertise. You picked somebody with high expertise that know the area as well. Will you have more information about the contractors available either through the website or the working group, or will that be available in some fashion? Because what you're saying sounds critically important.
Yeah, I think I'll defer to Bernice on what to put on the website, but we've certainly shared a lot of information to the VTA board of directors through the last meeting. So that's all public information that can certainly be shared.
Okay.
And then also there is our contractor KST has set up their own website, mostly to engage local vendors or local suppliers in the bidding process. And so I think they have a lot of information that's also publicly out there. And yeah, so maybe I'll defer to Bernice on what else we can add to the website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we could certainly add something. I know all three of the members of the JV team, part of Kiewit Shade Trailer, they all sent us bios and a list of all their major projects. So we certainly could add some background on them and other similar projects that they've done to our website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. And Adina, I see you have your hand up, which to stay on time, we have time for one more question in this section. We can come back to questions for Tony, depending, maybe during the CWG member report back, or if there's time remaining after Peter's section. But Adina, you're up.
Yes, and sorry, I came late. I think that the station content is still to follow. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, the next section is on station design refinements for downtown and Diridon.
Yeah, then was the platform question that I sent in writing answered during the narrative that I missed? And if so, what's the answer to it?
Do you want to ask your question to Tony, Adina?
Yes. So the question is the side-by-side platform has certain advantages, but it seems to make the platforms narrow and the platform the boarding island narrow. And so the question is, what is the width of that boarding island, and is there anything that can be done to make it be able to accommodate the expected ridership?
Sure. So the center platform in the proposed design is 22 feet wide. From the whole width of the platform is 22 feet wide. I would say, to answer your second question, absolutely, it does accommodate the ridership. So all of the requirements in terms of level of service that is provided for the expected ridership and any large gathering loads and things like that are all accommodated with this 22-foot wide platform. And then sorry, I think I missed the first part of the question as I started to think about the second part of the question.
Adina,
okay. Yeah, so the question is, if needed, is there anything that can be done to kind of get things out of the way and make it wider if needed?
Oh, so I think that what we've tried to do is it's a bit of a balancing act, right? Because essentially every foot that we add to the platform width is going to increase the diameter of the tunnel. We've pretty much maxed out the width of the platform in the tunnel diameter that we have. So we certainly, could increase the width of the platform, but at a cost of the overall program, and they're pretty significant costs, as you can imagine. So that's why we think that this, this 22-foot wide is a sweet spot of providing the needed service. And also, one other thing I'd add is there's other BART stations that have a 22-foot wide center platform in the existing system. So it's got some precedence in the BART system.
Okay, I'll send in writing. I'm curious about which ones, and like so I see the TBM order here in late 2022. So is there going to be and there's some funding decisions that are in the future in terms of making sure that all the funding is available. So is that a maybe you can answer the question at the end about there being enough money to order the TBM by the end of the year, when it seems like some of the funding availability will not be final.
In the interest of time, let's revisit that question if there's time. Peter, thank you very much, Tony. Peter, you're up for the station design refinements process for the downtown and Diridon stations.
Thank you, Doug. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Sokolov. I'm one of the lead architects working on the design of the stations for contract package 4, which includes 28th Street, downtown, and Diridon. I have met some of you before, so I will go straight into the content. As Tony was mentioning, in parallel to the CP2 tunnel team working on their proposed innovations, the stations team has been working on a station refinement effort, engaging with both public agencies and local stakeholders to try to improve the current designs of the stations or optimize certain priorities, which include station access and other circulation improvements. And that has been an ongoing process over the last couple of months, which will eventually lead to public engagement as we're doing right now, and continue as we kind of determine which of those refinements we want to go forward with. If you go to the next slide. So the goals of this process were laid out by the board as part of the approval of the tunneling contractor, was to improve connectivity and access to the stations, improve the passenger experience and circulation, and look for opportunities to optimize transit-oriented development integration. And so we really focused on the downtown and Diridon stations in this effort. And as I take you through, I can explain some of the changes that we've looked at and are exploring in this process and how they aim to achieve those goals. Go to the next slide. And ultimately what we want to do is take a series of different scenarios or options that we've developed and evaluate them using some of the criteria that Adriano described at the beginning and that have been kind of tested out with this group last month and also in the public engagement. And that is everything from passenger experience and what are the criteria for good passenger experience, urban design and integration, including intermodal connectivity and access, and then also looking at implementation implications like constructability, cost, schedule, whether it's environmentally cleared or not. All of those different things are also part of the evaluation. If you go to the next slide. So we'll start with downtown San Jose. This is the current design of the downtown station. There's three elements. The primary head house is on the right-hand side of the image, of the upper image there. There's a secondary entrance that's also on the north side of Santa Clara Street. And has elevator access at the moment. And then there's a egress and ventilation facility on the far left of the page between 2nd and 3rd Street, also on the north side of Santa Clara Street. And if you see in the cross section, because of the size of the site, which is bounded on both sides by properties that are not under VTA control, the vertical circulation of the downtown station has multiple switchbacks on the escalators, which this is still showing the current design, or without the station innovations that Tony discussed. So we're still showing the stacked platform configuration, but of course any change to adopt those innovations would actually improve the passenger experience, we think, in terms of reducing the switchbacks within that primary head house. To go to the next slide. So here's an overview of some of the refinements that we're looking at, and I'm happy to either answer questions or go into more detail, but we've kept this relatively high level just to kind of make sure that we have time to get through both of the stations. So some of the key goals were to reduce the number of escalator switchbacks, which will reduce travel time and lead to less sort of confusion for passengers, maximize the potential for on-site and high-density transit-oriented development. And so the current arrangement has a circular shaft, which contains the escalators, and I'll show you in a minute if we adopt a more rectangular excavation, we might be able to improve marginally the TOD capacity for the building on top of the station. And then the third option was exploring opportunities for either ground floor commercial or retail development as part of that. So if you go to the next slide, the current design, or the baseline design, as I mentioned, it has a circular shaft. If we go to a more elongated rectangular shaft, as you see in the drawing on the right, we're able to reduce the number of switchbacks needed at the escalators to just one switchback to get to the upper platform. And as mentioned, if we have the innovation that was described by Tony, then that would lead you to that upper mezzanine level, and then you would go down to the platform from that mezzanine. So, significantly simplifying the vertical circulation for most of the passengers. Of course, both options have elevators and stairs, so there's always an option to do something other than escalators, but we assume the majority of passengers will be using the escalators because they're quite deep stations. To go to the next slide. And this is the plan view of that same innovation, and you'll see the the benefit here in terms of transit-oriented development is that the current option with the circular shaft does not allow very much width on the left and the right-hand side for the structure above to carry down, particularly the shear walls, to resist seismic loads during an earthquake. And so by going to a sort of narrower, more rectangular configuration, we're able to widen some of those areas that may lead to more opportunity for commercial. We're showing this as back of house primarily, but it could also be commercial facing onto either the plaza or Santa Clara. And also allows more width for those structural elements to come down through the station. If you go to the next slide. So the other aspect which was raised as part of the board's request was to look at alternative entrance points, or in the case of Diridon, new second entrance points to the station. And so you can see the blue, green, and purplish colors there on the left are all potential options for a second entrance to the station, or in some cases, a third entrance to the station that would supplement the second entrance, which is between 1st and 2nd Street on the north side. So the large blue elliptical shape there is a site that's on the corner of Santa Clara and 2nd Street. And that would be a large enough parcel that it would replace the current secondary head house. And it would also have the ability to provide escalator access as opposed to the current second head house, which only has elevators. That site is a historic building and has some environmental issues associated with it that have to be, we're still evaluating what the impacts of those would be. But that one would provide an entrance on the southern side of Santa Clara Street, which has been identified as a key priority from the city. And then there's a couple of alternatives to that. One is the green rectangle that's on the top of the image in Fountain Alley. There would be an opportunity to create a smaller sized entrance within Fountain Alley, still maintaining the continuous pedestrian continuity of the alley itself, but provide elevator, escalator, and stair access to a tunnel, which would then connect to the platforms. And likewise, that same kind of configuration could be achieved on Santa Clara Street, and that one would connect to the existing secondary head house. So of these options, really only the blue option is one that would replace the existing secondary entrance. And if you go to the next slide, and also just one last aspect of that, again, going back to the innovations that Tony discussed, the central platform facilitates having access from both sides of the tunnel. And so the larger blue second entrance is really only achievable or best achieved with that innovation. So some of these factors that we're looking at actually have implications on one another. So then I'll just go on to Diridon, and I guess I'll take questions at the end. This is the current arrangement of Diridon. Because it's a larger size site, we have fewer escalator switchbacks as part of the configuration here. The current escalators go from east to west, so you have entrances facing onto Cahill and the future intermodal station, as well as onto Montgomery Street. Again, with the innovation on the platforms, there would be one less escalator switchback within the station, which we see as a benefit. And if you go to the next slide, these are the refinements that we're currently reviewing. And some of the key goals as part of this study of Diridon, which are slightly different than downtown, are looking for ways to improve connectivity to the future intermodal station. And then also looking at opportunities to try to maximize potential for on-site, high-density, transit-oriented development. So the circular shaft, in addition to providing a good passenger experience, it also is very efficient in terms of excavation. If we're to go to a more rectangular shaft, that's less efficient in terms of excavation. However, it does provide more opportunity for transit-oriented development on the site. So the two options on the right side are ones that we've developed in collaboration with the workshops we've been having with the key stakeholders. The one on the top maintains the same east-west orientation of the escalators, but allows more of a footprint for commercial development on the site. And the one on the bottom with the sort of L-shaped transit-oriented development around the station flips the orientation of the escalators, still provides access across Cahill to the future intermodal station, and provides slightly larger opportunity for transit-oriented development. Go to the next slide. The other thing that has been under discussion as part of the Diridon workshops has been looking for opportunities for a second entrance. And we've been focused primarily on trying to find a location, again, that would provide better proximity to the future intermodal station. And so we've been looking at sites along White Street, ideally on the east side of White Street, which would then kind of integrate directly into a potential future concourse. But the amount of area on that side of the street is quite constrained, so we have been looking to the other side as well. And then the other benefit of this second entrance is just in terms of trying to get people into the system as quickly as possible and capturing people who are traveling from the Alameda and the west side of San Jose. Providing that second entrance along here provides sort of equivalent access from both sides, both ends of the platform. So there's another added benefit on that side. So we have looked at many other options and other station entrance locations, but this summarizes, I think, sort of the front runners of the discussions to date. And if you go to the next slide, I can describe, I think, a little bit more just about the process. Next steps. So we're currently in the process of working with the stakeholders. We're engaging both in this CWG process as well as the board workshop on Friday to review and vet some of these ideas. We're going to then evaluate all the different options as we talked about, go through this technical and feasibility evaluation. So not just scoring them on whether they improve passenger experience and TOD opportunity, but whether they're possible, and then determine which of these preferred concepts we would advance with as part of the station refinement process. And if you go to the next slide, that may be, yes, that was it. So I've seen some things pop up in the chat, but I haven't had a chance to read anything. So if there are questions, please let me know.
That was Adina's question that Erica answered in the chat. So we can focus on time for you, Peter. And Kristen, would you mind going to the previous slide for the discussion? And Nate, I see your hand up. So Nate, you're up.
Thanks. And thank you, Peter, for the, can you put it on slide 38, please? Oh, I'm sorry. The slides might be numbered a little bit differently. Maybe two above where it shows the blue circle and the stuff on Fountain Alley.
The second entrances.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, I thought I had those numbers right.
Not this one. Not this one. Can keep going.
Two ahead, maybe.
No, forward.
Oh no.
Okay,
right there. Thank you, 40. Yeah, just wanted to thank everyone who's involved in this. We've been pushing for a long time for consideration of the southern entrance, and thank our partners on the board and at the city for helping with that. We're, also engaged with our members on some eminent domain stuff, and basically are hoping that there's a way to find a ventilation area without using the Mexico Bakery building, and that was deferred at the last meeting, and we're hoping a solution can be found there. And so I guess my question is, if and you touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything else you can provide, if depending on the scale of the southern entrance, whether it's able to get environmentally cleared, whether it's able to be designed to meet the tunnel below, does that change the need for the secondary head house to be at the what we're calling the site of the Eterna Tower at the moment? Like, is there anything else you can provide on that? Is it an either or? Will there definitely be both? Like, is there anything else you can say about that, please?
Are you asking whether if the blue parcel becomes an option, whether that would also eliminate the Mexico Bakery facility?
I'm actually asking if it eliminates the Eterna Tower, the secondary head house facility.
Yes. The large blue site would become the secondary entrance, and then the existing secondary entrance would go away. And
Okay.
And then I would say there's the ventilation facility that's at 3rd Street. You know, that also has the end of platform stair. So depending on where the platform gets adjusted to meet that other secondary entrance, you know, we would have to look at it. I think we're still assuming that that would be needed, but there's a potential that that could also go away. I think it's still to be determined.
Great. We're in active conversations with the building owner there, and she's extremely concerned about that. So we're just, you know, we'll remain in dialogue about that, and then we don't have to move off the slide. I just wanted to say we're really fans of the west entrance at Diridon over on I believe it's White Street that you pointed out. But Bernice, did you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, they're part of all of this, as Peter mentioned, is the criterion looking at the feasibility, the environmental implications and everything. So I just, while there are possibilities, I think, you know, with the historical status of the potential other sites, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there are challenges with some of these options.
Yeah, we're at this point, we're just really happy to see it on a map and see that it's being officially considered, and we understand some of the challenges there, though. And I'm not an expert on this, but the way that the building looks, I don't believe the Western Dental site in the pink rectangle is actually historic. It's just integrated in a way that appears to be part of the overall B of I building 30 East Santa Clara, but I'm sure you guys have experts to look that over. I'll, you know, put my hand down and stop, but thank you guys for kind of advancing this idea and taking us to the next step.
Yeah, the pink is actually that sidewalk entrance. And then the blue would be the Western Dental, and the green would be like a Fountain Alley kind of sidewalk entrance. So there's three options.
Gotcha, thanks.
And really only the blue one would replace the second entrance. The other ones are probably not able to take the capacity of passengers that were expecting that second entrance. So they would almost be supplemental or connected to the second entrance.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I see your hand up.
Hi, I don't know if I missed this when Tony Barr was making the presentation, but I thought when we were reading the reports in the media that the depth was going to be shallower, right? It's just going to be wider. But it looks like from the presentation, with either design, either the wider or the narrower, the depth is not going to change, right? So in other words, you're going to have the same depth, but wider tunnel. Is that going to cause a delay in the completion date of the BART?
Yeah, I can jump in and take this. So what we've actually done, or what the contractor is proposing to do, is keep the top of the tunnel at the same depth as was proposed in the original design. But because of I'd say the relative distance between the platform and the top of the tunnel, with the proposed concepts, it's a little bit shallower, a little bit closer to the top of the tunnel, which means that it's shallower from the surface down to the platform level than the original design was. And then to answer your second question, no, we're not anticipating any significant increase in time to build the slightly larger tunnel compared to the slightly smaller tunnel. And in fact, we'll actually, our contractor believes it's much faster and more efficient to build the interior concrete structures with their proposed concept than what was in the original design.
So you're saying it's shallow, we're only measuring from the top to the platform, right? The tunnel itself, the big circle, is still going to be the same depth.
Correct. Yeah, the tunnel is
I
the
see.
same depth, but the
I
distance
see.
that a passenger would have to travel is slightly
I see.
shallower.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's, yeah, I think particularly for at the lower platform in the old configuration had to go down extra, whereas with this, everyone's going down to a higher level. So I think overall it does reduce the distance that passengers have to travel.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I see Dina having her hand up. Dina, you're up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for considering the feedback and coming up with ways of getting the additional entrances and looking at how to optimize the amount of transit-oriented development. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, Dina. Any other questions for Peter? Although we are at time, and so we are going into the CWG member report out section of the meeting. So any other questions or comments will eat into that time. Just a heads up.
Doug, very briefly, I just wanted to just remind everyone this: we will be presenting this material in a little bit more detail at the Friday's VTA board workshop. So if you are interested in learning more and or providing comments, we welcome you to tune into that.
Excellent reminder, Adriano. Fred, that's your hand up.
Yeah, Adriano, just following up on that. So when you present this at the board workshop, will it be presented in a way that provides the board with options and they can direct staff to move forward with certain options, or is it just literally just going to be informational and there won't be any sort of direction or decisions made at that point?
I can
believe
answer that. It's
thank you.
informational at this point.
Okay. So at what point would the board then be given the opportunity to then provide staff with direction and options and whatnot?
You know, I am not 100%. I think that was a question that came up at the joint VTA board meeting on what decisions would be board decisions, what would be project owner manager decisions. So I am not sure at this point. It's for information for the board to see what's you know, being done with these three concurrent activities. And then once we look and analyze and look at the feasibility, I'm sure we'll report back to the board. And then at that point, that would be where the board might make a decision. You know, of course, if there's anything, you know, related to a change in, you know, property and things like that, I'm sure the board would be weighing in on that aspect of it.
Okay. Thanks, Bernice.
Okay, any final questions or comments for Peter before we jump into the CWG member report back portion of the meeting? If so, please raise your hand.
Hey, Doug.
Yes, Eric.
Quick question, and it's a question for Peter. I meant to ask you the what's the width of that canopy structure in the sidewalk option, the sidewalk entrance option? So what's the assumed width of the sidewalk and the assumed width of the canopy structure? Yeah, exactly, down below, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, again, just off the top of my head, I don't have the dimension in front of me, but I think it's roughly 12 feet. You know, it's basically the minimum stair width, which is around 5.5 feet, and then the escalator width, which is another 5 feet, plus, you know, the buildup of the exterior skin of that canopy element. So we have those side by side, and then we have an elevator that's kind of just it's part of the same entrance, but it's kind of in line with the stair and the escalator.
Okay.
So yeah, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 feet is my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we've looked at that as about 14 feet, and the current sidewalk width is 16 feet. So the sidewalk would need, are we talking about the one on Santa Clara Street?
I think the sidewalk, yeah, the sidewalk width
Fountain Alley,
varies. Yeah, it's Santa Clara.
But yeah, the sidewalk would need to be considerably widened as shown in that image.
Thank you.
And I also see a question in the chat from Adina. Tony, I think this one is for you. What were the other BART stations that have 22-foot platforms?
I knew I was going to get that question when I offered it up. I'm sorry, I don't have the names of the stations, but my understanding is there's multiple stations in the BART system. I think maybe we could follow up with you on what those are afterwards.
I think Erica was going to say the same thing. Sounds good. So we'll follow up. And then, okay, Alisar, can we? Tony, can you take that one as well? Alisar wants to confirm.
Yeah, just wanted to confirm I heard that correctly. With the tunnel innovation, the mezzanines would be entirely within the tunnel. That is correct. Yes, those mezzanines would be constructed fully within the board tunnel.
Cool. And let's transition to the CWG member report back, because we do want to hear from you. And we have two key questions that we'd like folks to share answers to. One, how have you been sharing information and updates on the BSD project with your community? And two, what have you been hearing? And I'll let folks put up their hands to share with the group, and I'll call on folks in the order that hands are up, with priority going to our CWG members. Or if there's other things you'd like to report out on, you can as well. But we'd really love to hear responses on these questions. If not the CWG meeting, a future one. That's particularly going to get important as we get into construction.
Hi, I will start. I kind of communicate with the residents through our Facebook page, mostly. Any posts about the BART station are among our more popular posts. So I know there's a lot of interest. And in your recent block party, I hope you saw a lot of San Jose downtown residents. And this is a significant enough change, and it's been reported in several newspapers. I don't know when, I didn't quite hear when the decision is going to be made. If this is going to be a real change, I hope a representative will come to our downtown meetings and report to the residents. I'm sure people are worried about possible delays. We've been worried for a while, but you still, looks like you're still staying with the 2030 date, which is good.
Yep. And we'll be sure to capture that notes. You know, Bernice just described as kind of unclear, but we can capture in the notes for as a to-do for us when it does become clear to come talk with the downtown downtown residents association. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. And thank you for sharing, and thank you for providing that update. Adina, you're on mute.
Sharing, yes, using email and blogs and social media, and some of the questions are some of the things that I've been asking in this meeting, and generally the topics that people are interested in are the things that we've been giving feedback on pretty consistently, in terms of the entrances on multiple sides of the street, and the passenger flow, and the transfers, and the TOD. So these are so the things that are coming forward are things that really address the things that people have been concerned and interested about.
Great, thank you very much for sharing, Adina, and sharing back what you're hearing. And it's also really great to hear that we're covering the topics that the people you're interacting with and representing want to hear about. So that's sounds good all around. Any other CWG members like to share about how they've been sharing with their communities and what they've been hearing back? Okay, so thank you, Adina and Elizabeth, for sharing today. Look forward to hearing some more CWG members answer those 2 questions in upcoming meetings. So with that, I think we can jump on to next steps. Next slide, please. So this is a reminder, we do have the next CWG meeting in November, right? So this is the working agenda right now that we'll work with Fred as your chair to finalize. So for next month, we currently have slated an update on phase 2, an update from real estate, report back on community engagement, and then the standing item for the CWG member report back. And Kristen, I snuck one more slide at the end. It's just a duplicate. If you can go to the next one, it's just a reminder of the other upcoming meetings. It was at the beginning of the deck. You know, so just the big reminder that on Friday is the Board of Directors workshop on September 16th. So please feel welcome to tune into that. And that's all we have, you know, and there's the other upcoming meetings as well. And that's all we have for today. If there's anything else anyone would like to say or ask, we have 5 minutes left in the meeting time. Fred, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I just want to let other CWG members know that if there's something they'd want to see on the agenda in November, just you can let me know as well, and I'll do my best to work with VTA to, you know, get it on there.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you for leading as the chair. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask for the presenters today or share with the group before we adjourn? Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this CWG meeting. I always want to call you Mr. Diridon. Rod, thank you much for being here. Feels really great to see you applaud. Rod, do you want to say something? So you're on mute. I'm going to unmute you right now. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Although I still see Rod talking, so I don't.
Does that work now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it works when you click off that funny little microphone thing. I tried to get in earlier, and my regular computer just blew up. It stopped working. So maybe you folks were working on really overcharged stuff. Let me talk now. I'm on the laptop. Very quickly, say thank you very much for especially your concern about TOD. You can only do TOD once in 100 years, and you got to do it when you're doing the stations. Otherwise, you lose the opportunity. You have to wait until you go through a redevelopment, which is typically a long time away. And in that time, you lose a lot of money for the transit agency, a lot of ridership for the agency, and a lot of revenue for the community in terms of higher taxes, tax revenue. So thank you very much for the TOD concern. Is this now designated, Doug, as a formal environmental clearance for the station area?
The VTA's BART Phase 2 project does have full environmental clearance, yes.
Okay, and so that covers the station areas also? Does that cover the station area also?
To a certain extent, and I think Erica is probably in a good position to answer that. Erica, do you want to take that one? To what extent does environmental clearance for the project cover the station areas? I think it includes some TOD.
Yes, we environmentally cleared. Our construction staging areas have also been environmentally cleared for transit-oriented development, and so some of it includes some of the adjacent area. But as we've mentioned here, you know, the transit-oriented development is not part of the federally funded project, and so will occur in close proximity, but not as part of the federally funded project.
It very well could, though. If you were skillful, you could make the station part of the transit-oriented development. And it's been done in other areas.
Right, there's definitely efforts for it to be integrated, and there's efforts going on ongoing, but just as part of the federal project.
I don't want to take you beyond your time, Erica. Thank you very much. But if you had a chance to chat with me sometime, I'd love to do that.
Sure.
Also, you need to bring up to date and bring along with you the Diridon Joint Powers Advisory Board. There are some good people that have been working now for goodness over 20 years, and they haven't gotten anywhere. So
yeah, we closely coordinate with the Diridon Station Integrated Concept Plan partners and who present to the Joint Policy Advisory Board on the Diridon Station area.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Rod. Thank you for continuing to carry that flag. Christine, I see your hand up. I know we're to do your VTA. We're at time. Is it critical?
No, I just wanted to say hello to Rod and that I'm on the TOD team and we are working closely with BART to try to make this as integrated as possible.
Christina, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And then I also say the last thing before we adjourn, the question about where else in the BART system are there 22-foot platforms. Susan's on the line is with BART, message me. There's 22-foot platforms at 16th Street and 24th Street, Mission, Balboa Park, and North Berkeley. So I will just share that. And we are at time. We were soft ending earlier, so I'm going to officially adjourn us now. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for participating. We'll see you in November and around. So take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see everyone.